Hi YouTubers, how are you all? Welcome to my second vlog on my new channel. I hope you're well. I hope that you will like, share and subscribe this channel and comment on the bottom if you have anything to say. I thought what I'd talk about in this vlog and the second vlog on this channel is how I came out. I've not done that before. I've never talked about how I came out before. So before I make it more clearer, before I go on, I'll make it more clearer for you. I came out twice. The first time I came out to my family as bisexual. And because of internal homophobia that I had in myself and the feeling that I was a wrong 'un and all the rest of it, the stuff that goes through your head when you're brought up in a religious family and you're surrounded by negative messages about coming out and the LGBT community back in the 90s. It took me a long time to come to conclusions with my sexuality and gender. I always knew I was trans from a long age, and I'll talk about that in another vlog in a few moments time. I'll talk about that in another vlog. But on this one, I'm just going to talk about how I came out. So the first time I came out as bisexual, and I came out to my family after a long struggle with trying to get it into my own, come to terms with it myself and the acceptance of it back in the early noughties. So I must have been 22 when I came out to my family. I hadn't had a gay or bisexual relationship in that time, but I knew that I was bisexual. There was a time when I thought maybe I was gay, but I came to the realization that I was definitely a bisexual individual. I was definitely bi. Then the problem came. Well, my family accepted it. Everybody was fine. It was amazing. There's a sort of history with my dad that I don't really want to go into, but an incident that happened through him put me back in the closet for a long time, and I found it difficult to come out because of the things he had done to disgrace the family, basically. And I didn't want to put pressure or confusion in the minds of my fellow siblings and my mum when we were having to deal with some nasty fallout. So I stayed in the closet for a long time. So I didn't come out until I was 22, as I say. And it seemed quite easy. Everybody was accepting. Everybody was fine. I kind of knew that would be the case because my mum was very accepting of things like that. Although I'll go into something in a later vlog about my transition that might show she did have a bit of a problem with my transition. But coming out as bi was simple. Everybody was accepting. They kind of already knew it. My brother-in-law said the communal garden stuff, you're just greedy. Everything was fine. But that wasn't enough. Coming out as bi was laying the groundwork for how I felt about trying to come out as trans. Now, I had to deal with my trans identity a lot because back when I was looking into it, there wasn't much information, and the only trans stuff really you could get your hands on was in a pawn shop. It's not ideal. You're getting your images of trans women from a pawn shop, but that's all there was really that I could find, and the internet was new. And so I didn't really start searching online for stuff until I was a little bit older, in my early 20s. So how did I come out as trans to my family? My family knew I was a transvestite. They knew that. There were certain clues around the house that had given it away. They made passing comments, jokey little passing comments and stuff like that. But no one actually came up to me and said, we know you're a transvestite. It was difficult, but I was trying to hide it because you have to understand, back then I still felt I was a wrong 'un. I was a pervert. There was something wrong about me. I wasn't accepting of it myself, although I knew I had to go on this path to survive. So coming out to my family as trans was difficult because I'll give you an example as I'll explain how it was. My mum was sitting down watching a program in the late 90s, about 99, 2000, before I moved out to Southampton. I was living in where the family lived, in this town, this little village. and they were watching this program about trans women, and anybody knows about the films that were put out about the trans community back then. They're not very flattering. They were very uncomfortable to watch. I didn't tend to watch them because it was just too painful. It's just too difficult to watch. My mum had sat down and watched the whole thing, and I came into the room sort of like towards the end of this documentary being on the TV, and the first thing my mum said to me was, "You don't want to do that, do you? You don't want to do that. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to do that, do you?" So what do you do when that happens? You've already come out as bisexual. Now you're trying to lay the groundwork to come out as trans, but your mother is kind of making it clear that they don't really want you to do that because of the documentaries they've seen on the telly. Yes. So, what did I do? Well, I felt that there was only one way I could do it, and that was to do a fait accompli. Rather than tell my parents and my siblings and everybody what was going on, I started to dress in female clothing, in women's clothes, if you like, feminine clothing, stuff that women wear. In 2000, after an experience I'd had with a friend of mine who I was a partner with at the time, who just basically gave me the carte blanche to go out and release myself into the world and be me. She made me feel comfortable enough to be me. So I started on the pathway after our relationship. So I basically started dressing as a woman. But I did it. I must admit, I did it in an asexual way. If you saw me walking down the street, you wouldn't be able to tell what sort of clothing I was wearing. They were all bought from fashion stores that cater for women's tastes. But when you saw me, it was just jeans, t-shirt, jacket. They're all women's clothes, but at the end of the day, you couldn't necessarily tell if they were male or female. So I didn't go out in dresses and skirts or anything like that. Although I had experience of doing that when I first started to come out back in 2099, before I moved to Southampton. I would go out on little dates with guys, and I would dress and I would go out, and it was liberating, and everybody knew I was trans, and I felt secure with the guy I was with. He was a little bit more open-minded. I was able to go to the pubs like the Elmer and Upham. No one really said anything, although I got some dirty looks. It didn't bother me. I was liberated. So how was I going to come out to my fairest? It was a fait accompli. So I had started dressing, and then I started counselling. So I saw a counsellor, Leanne, in Southampton, and we discussed through the issues I had around going on the pathways to transition. Now, the next stage I decided to take was to go private part NHS. Now, nowadays you can't do that, and it changed halfway through my first transition, because I transitioned twice. It happened first through my first transition. I found a sympathetic GP in my surgery, and he would prescribe me an NHS prescription, and I would go to a private psychiatrist, Dr. Russell Reid in London, and he would be my psychiatrist, and he would fill out the form for the medicines, and I would then give it to my GP, and then he would write it out as an NHS prescription. That only lasted about 3.5 years, and then the NHS came down on my doctor and said, you've got to go through Charing Cross or you're not doing it at all. So how did I come out to my mum and dad? It was a fait accompli, basically. I did just basically go ahead. I went to London for my first appointment with Dr. Russell Reid. I got the prescription, I came back, I then saw my GP the next day. This is all taking place in 2004, but around about the summer of 2000, spring, summer of 2004. I'm 28 at the time. I took the prescription back from Dr. Russell Reid, gave it to my GP, he wrote the prescription out, and I had an NHS prescription, and I started the hormones. And I was on hormones for about 2 weeks before I started to feel a difference in my skin texture. And I thought, as soon as that happened, I thought to myself, I'm going to have to tell my family what's going on. to be honest with you, I can't remember too much about their reaction other than the fact that my mum was a bit worried. I just basically said to them, look, I'm doing this. I need to do this. I'm doing this. I explained to them how I had felt when I was 5. I explained to them that this was nothing that some psychiatrist had put in my head through my mental health stuff to make me feel like this was what I needed to do. And that's what my family did think for a long time, especially when I detransitioned after my first transition. They did think that some psychiatrist had planted this idea in my head and made me run with it. It wasn't that at all. I knew. When you're 5 years old and you have your first experience of gender where you want to be a girl, it's difficult to get out of that. A lot of things happened after that I can't really go into for personal reasons, but it was basically either beaten or abused out of me, and so I internalized everything and became a very angry young person, trying to escape from the world through drugs and all the rest of it. But my family just accepted that I was going to do this. They had their fears, they had their concerns, and they didn't think I was doing it for my own reasons. And when I detransitioned after the first transition, and that was because my doctor was told he had to end giving me turning a private prescription into an NHS prescription, and I had to go to Charing Cross. And there was lots of reasons why I didn't want to go to Charing Cross. Charing Cross didn't have a very good reputation back in those days. It was seen as strict and abhorrent and very, very intrusive. They didn't let you smoke. They had strict regimes over health. And basically, I was a party girl. I was smoking dope, smoking fags, doing speed, doing drugs. And I didn't want to give all that up to transition. I wasn't ready to do that because I wasn't ready up here. I had rushed into my first transition. I hadn't really thought it through. I had just knew what I needed to do and I just charged at it as quickly as possible without reflecting on what I was doing. And so my second transition has been different. The why I fear about coming out, the problem I had about coming out was basically because when I detransitioned, my mum passed away after ill health. And I've always felt that my mum had this feeling that I had been tricked by my psychiatrist into believing something about myself that wasn't true. I know where she is now, on the other side, I know she accepts me. I can only explain that through the dreams I have. I can't explain it any other way. But I just want to say, for all those who worry about what their parents think, my mum feared what this would mean for me. She thought I was going to be alone, no one would love me, I would be abused and all the rest of it. But the Christmas that I transitioned in 2004, my mum wrote a letter to all the family on my dad's and my mum's side. And in that letter she explained that I was going to transition to a woman and that I wanted to be a woman and that my new name was Orla and that I wanted people to use female pronouns and that she accepted me that way and she loved me and she hoped all the best for me. She didn't have to do that. She could have just stuck her toes in the ground and her heels in the ground and just said, no, you're not doing this, this is wrong. I think this is wrong for you, but she didn't do that. The experience can be different for everybody. It can be different for everybody. Don't necessarily do what I did. Talk to your parents. Let them guide you. And hopefully it will be a lot better experience than what I had as coming out as trans and the problems that I had. So hang in there. Do your best. Think about everything. But know that what you have to do, you have to do. And that hopefully your parents will love you. But if they don't, you need to do this for yourself. Come out for yourself, not for anybody else. And that's my story. Bye YouTube. Share, like, subscribe. Goodbye.